consequences. But either way, we cannot have a world with the Ayatollahs with their finger on the nuclear button. We cannot have a situation that would result in an arms race across the Middle East in terms of nuclear proliferation. And President Trump is determined one way or another. Iran has been offered a way out of this to make sure that we don't have a world that can be threatened by a radical regime, not only our ally Israel, but the entire world that would be threatened by a radical regime, destroy not only Israel, but its neighbors, and have the capability to hit the United States. Martha, we cannot imagine a situation like that, and we're not going to have it.
I want to turn to Ukraine now. You were in Saudi this week meeting with Ukrainians crafting this so-called 30-day ceasefire. Vladimir Putin basically rejected that, saying he wants a long-term peace deal, but this one didn't work. So what's next, and will there be a meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin soon?
Well, I was in Jeddah with our great Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and we walked through a number of aspects, a number of factors that have to be in place to achieve a permanent peace. A fundamental aspect of the approach here from President Trump is that this has to be permanent. That's what we continue to hear from the Ukrainians, that we cannot have a situation where this continues to break down. At the same time, we are engaging with the Russians. What we heard from President Putin was that he will absolutely consider a ceasefire. There are some other things that he would like to see that President Trump's national security team is considering over the coming days. So this back and forth diplomacy is ongoing, as the NATO Secretary General just said this week. Only President Trump could have broken this logjam. Just think where we were a few months ago. I mean, we were literally this far apart. And we are now driving both sides together to achieve a permanent peace, stop the killing, stop the bloodshed that is on the battlefield with thousands of people being lost today. And what I find so interesting about the criticism is, essentially the criticism is we should just continue open-ended warfare, which has devolved into trench warfare, a meat grinder of people, national treasure, munitions, with no end in sight. President Trump's determined to end it, and we're having sides to do.
Sean Hannity from Fox News laid out to you what he thought a deal would look like. He said rare earth minerals deal, a component that keeps U.S. involvement and a presence in Ukraine, maybe European troops. Ukraine will not be part of NATO, and parts of Ukraine heavily populated by people from Russia, maybe the Donbass region, would go to Putin. You agreed with that, correct? Is that the plan?
Well, those are the components of negotiations that have happened before in 2022 and even before then. This is going to be some type of territory for future security guarantees, the future status of Ukraine. We've talked about, as Secretary of Defense has said at the NATO Defense Ministerial, that a pathway, a permanent pathway into NATO or permanent membership into NATO for Ukraine is incredibly unlikely. And that's not just from the United States.
We're just running out of time here.
That's from a number of other countries as well. So those are all the components, Martha. We know the components. There is a deal that will be had here, and we are talking to both sides to figure out how we can get both sides to the table and settle diplomacy and stop the killing and stop this war.
Mr. Walton, I don't mean to interrupt, but so Russia could be given the Donbass in addition to hanging on to Crimea, even though they invaded Ukraine. Quickly, if you can, please.
Martha, we have to ask ourselves, is it in our national interest? Is it realistic? We've talked to the Europeans about this and the Ukrainians. Are we going to drive every Russian off of every inch of Ukrainian soil, including Crimea. And what the strategy of the Biden administration was as long as it takes, as much as it takes, no matter what the timeline is, which is essentially endless warfare in an environment that we're literally losing hundreds of thousands of people in a matter of months and could escalate into World War III. So we can talk about what's right and wrong, and we also have to talk about the reality of the situation on the ground. And that's what we are doing through diplomacy, through shuttle diplomacy, through proximity talks. And it astounds me how that is criticized.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I appreciate it, Mr. Waltz. Up next, 10 Senate Democrats, including their own leader, Chuck Schumer, helped Republicans pass a bill to avert a shutdown. We'll talk to Rhode Island's Sheldon Whitehouse about why he didn't join them and the divisions now embroiling his party.